The atmospheric readings were doing something Elena had never seen in 3 years aboard Kepler 442, and that was saying something considering she'd witnessed a solar flare turn her morning coffee into what could only be described as caffeinated plasma. The numbers dancing across her holographic display defied every principle of physics she'd learned during her doctorate, which admittedly hadn't prepared her for much beyond explaining to her mother why xenobiology was a real job despite the conspicuous lack of aliens to study. Until now, apparently. The energy signature pulsed in patterns that made her instruments hum a tune suspiciously similar to Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, which would have been charming if it weren't completely impossible. Elena adjusted the sensors for the 4th time, muttering complaints about government-issued equipment that probably cost more than her childhood home but couldn't distinguish between cosmic phenomena and nursery rhymes. A shimmer appeared in the observation deck's viewport, rippling like heat waves over summer asphalt, except they were in the vacuum of space where heat waves had no business existing. Elena's scientific mind immediately began cataloging impossibilities while her survival instinct suggested backing away from the transparent steel barrier that separated her from the infinite cold of space. The shimmer expanded, taking on the characteristics of liquid mercury suspended in midair, reflecting lights that didn't exist and casting shadows that fell upward. Elena reached for her emergency comm, then hesitated. What exactly would she report? Houston, we have a problem, specifically that reality seems to be having a minor breakdown in Sector 7. Through the rippling distortion, a figure began to emerge. Humanoid, definitely, which was either reassuring or terrifying depending on one's perspective on cosmic coincidences. Elena had always fallen into the terrifying camp, mainly because the universe had demonstrated a disturbing sense of humor in her experience. The figure stepped through what Elena could only assume was some form of portal, moving with a grace that suggested either advanced technology or really good yoga classes. As the distortion faded, Elena found herself staring at a woman who appeared remarkably human, save for ears that extended upward in elegant points, catching the station's artificial lighting like polished silver. Elena's first coherent thought was that the visitor had better taste in fashion than anyone aboard the research station, which wasn't particularly difficult considering Elena's own wardrobe consisted primarily of regulation jumpsuits and a lucky sweater her grandmother had knitted with yarn that changed colors based on atmospheric pressure. The alien woman moved with purpose toward the center of the observation deck, seemingly unbothered by the artificial gravity or the fact that she just materialized from nothing in a way that would make theoretical physicists weep with joy or existential dread. Elena pressed closer to the viewport, her breath fogging the transparent steel as she watched the visitor extend one graceful arm. What happened next would later require Elena to completely revise her understanding of reality, though she'd always suspected reality was somewhat overrated anyway. The alien woman traced a perfect circle in the air with her index finger, the movement so fluid it seemed choreographed. Where her finger passed, the space itself began to respond, glowing with a soft luminescence that had no identifiable source. The light wasn't harsh or artificial like the station's fluorescence that gave everyone a complexion reminiscent of processed cheese. Instead, it possessed an organic quality, warm and inviting, like sunlight filtered through morning mist. Elena's instruments went completely mad, displaying readings that suggested the local spacetime was being gently massaged into new configurations. Her tablet beeped insistently, then began showing her a recipe for something called quantum soup, which seemed both inappropriate and oddly tempting. The glowing circle expanded slowly, revealing glimpses of impossible geometries within its boundaries. Elena caught sight of structures that seemed to exist in more dimensions than her brain could process, cities that floated on streams of crystallized light, and what appeared to be a garden where the flowers grew in mathematical spirals that hurt to contemplate for too long. The alien woman noticed Elena's presence, turning with an expression of mild curiosity rather than the alarm one might expect from someone who'd just been caught performing cosmic renovations. Their eyes met through the transparent steel, and Elena felt a moment of connection that transcended species barriers, though it might have just been the shared understanding that Mondays were universally terrible regardless of planetary origin. Elena lifted one hand in what she hoped was a universal greeting, immediately regretting the decision as she realized she might be accidentally declaring war or requesting directions to the nearest restroom. The alien woman responded by tilting her head slightly, those elegant ears shifting like satellite dishes fine-tuning their reception. The glowing circle continued to pulse between them, casting dancing shadows across the observation deck that seemed to move independently of their source. Elena's scientific training kicked in, overriding her instinct to run screaming toward the emergency pods. She activated her recording equipment, hoping to document humanity's first confirmed contact with alien intelligence, assuming her tablet could focus on something other than interdimensional cooking recipes. The alien woman stepped closer to the viewport, her movements creating small ripples in the space around her, as if reality itself was slightly more fluid in her presence. She pressed one palm against the transparisteel from her side, and Elena found herself mirroring the gesture, their hands separated by mere centimeters and the vast gulf between species. Through some form of communication Elena couldn't identify, she sensed amusement from the alien woman, as if her visitor found something delightfully entertaining about their situation. Elena couldn't blame her. The absurdity of conducting first contact while wearing a jumpsuit emblazoned with "Property of Earth Research Consortium" and holding a tablet displaying soup recipes wasn't lost on her. The glowing circle pulsed brighter, and Elena realized she was witnessing something that would change everything humanity thought it knew about the universe, assuming she survived long enough to tell anyone about it. Her morning routine of atmospheric readings and complaining about coffee quality seemed remarkably mundane by comparison. The alien woman smiled, and Elena discovered that some expressions truly were universal. Elena had always prided herself on being prepared for the unexpected, which was why her emergency kit contained everything from radiation detectors to antacid tablets, though she was beginning to suspect neither would prove particularly useful in her current situation. The alien woman had been attempting communication for the past 20 minutes using a series of harmonic tones that somehow bypassed Elena's ears entirely and resonated directly inside her skull, creating the peculiar sensation of having thoughts that weren't quite her own. The first clear concept that emerged was something resembling a name, though calling it a name was like calling a symphony a simple tune. The harmonics conveyed layers of meaning that Elena's mind struggled to unpack. Starlight filtered through crystal formations, the mathematical relationship between spiral galaxies and nautilus shells, and the sound of laughter echoing across dimensions. Her brain, with typical human practicality, condensed this cosmic poetry into something manageable, Lyralii of the ninth resonance. Elena attempted to reciprocate by stating her own name clearly while pointing to herself, a gesture that caused Lyralii to tilt her head with an expression Elena interpreted as polite confusion. The alien woman responded by creating a small light construct that displayed what appeared to be Elena's name written in symbols that shifted between languages faster than her eyes could track, finally settling on glyphs that looked suspiciously like her grocery list from last Tuesday. The communication barrier presented challenges that Elena's xenobiology training had somehow failed to anticipate, probably because most of her coursework had focused on theoretical alien biochemistry rather than practical interdimensional etiquette. Lyralii seemed equally puzzled by human communication methods, particularly when Elena attempted to demonstrate speech by exaggerating her lip movements in a way that made her look like she was impersonating a fish with emotional problems. Lyralii's solution to their linguistic impasse involved expanding the glowing circle she'd created earlier, transforming it into something resembling a three-dimensional holographic interface. Images began flowing through the luminous barrier, star charts that reconfigured themselves as Elena watched, technological diagrams that hurt to contemplate directly, and what appeared to be a cosmic family photo featuring beings with elongated ears posed in front of a nebula. The revelation that Lyralii's people had been observing human development came through a series of images that would have been flattering if they weren't so embarrassing. Elena watched her species' greatest achievements play out in accelerated time: the discovery of fire, the invention of the wheel, the development of spaceflight, and humanity's first attempts at interstellar communication, which apparently struck Lyralii's people as charmingly chaotic. Elena learned this particular assessment when Lyralii projected an image of Earth's various radio signals as they appeared from her species' perspective. A cacophonous blend of music, television broadcasts, and emergency transmissions that created patterns resembling abstract art designed by someone having a caffeine-induced breakdown. Lyralii's amusement at humanity's communication methods was evident, though Elena suspected being found charmingly chaotic by an advanced alien civilization was better than being found tediously predictable. The cultural exchange took an unexpected turn when Elena attempted to explain human technology by gesturing toward her tablet, which had finally stopped displaying recipe suggestions and returned to showing normal atmospheric readings. Lyralii examined the device with interest, then demonstrated her own people's approach to information storage by cupping her hands and creating what appeared to be a miniature galaxy complete with spinning planets and tiny weather systems. Elena's attempts to document this extraordinary demonstration proved futile as her recording equipment kept malfunctioning in creative ways. Her camera produced images that showed everything except what she was actually filming. Her audio recorder captured sounds from what appeared to be an alien radio station playing something resembling elevator music, and her tablet began displaying helpful suggestions for 10 ways to improve your interdimensional communication skills. Lyralii found Elena's technological difficulties genuinely entertaining, responding to each equipment failure with musical laughter that made the air around them shimmer with prismatic colors. Elena began to suspect that her visitor's technology operated on principles that made human devices nervous, like introducing a smartphone to a tornado and expecting them to be friends. The breakthrough in their communication came when Elena, frustrated by her malfunctioning equipment, attempted to explain the concept of coffee by pantomiming the process of brewing, drinking, and experiencing the subsequent caffeine-induced alertness that kept human civilization functioning. Lyralii watched this performance with growing fascination, then created her own demonstration by manipulating quantum fields like a master chef kneading interdimensional bread. Elena watched in amazement as Lyralii shaped reality itself into familiar patterns, creating temporary constructs that illustrated her people's relationship with the universe. Where humans used tools and technology to manipulate their environment, Lyralii's species had learned to convince matter and energy to cooperate through a combination of scientific understanding and what Elena could only describe as cosmic diplomacy. The glowing circle between them expanded further, revealing glimpses of Lyralii's homeworld that defied Elena's understanding of planetary physics. Cities floated on probability currents that shifted based on the collective mood of their inhabitants, while artists created masterpieces by reshaping atomic structures into forms that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Gardens grew in spirals that followed mathematical principles Elena recognized but had never seen applied to horticulture, with flowers that bloomed in spectrums of light that had no names in human language. Elena's scientific mind raced to comprehend the implications of what she was witnessing while her practical nature focused on more immediate concerns, such as whether Lyralii's people had developed anything resembling caffeine and whether interdimensional trade agreements might be possible. The universe had suddenly become infinitely larger and more complicated, but Elena's primary concern remained ensuring she could maintain her morning coffee routine regardless of cosmic revelations. Lyralii seemed to sense Elena's practical bent, projecting images that suggested her arrival wasn't merely a social visit. The displays showed cosmic phenomena that Elena's instruments had been detecting without understanding. Energy patterns that indicated something significant approaching their local spacetime, something that would require both human ingenuity and alien wisdom to address properly. Elena's tablet chose that moment to announce that it had successfully downloaded the complete interdimensional cookbook, complete with reviews from satisfied customers across 17 different dimensions, most of whom rated the quantum soup 5 stars for its existentially satisfying flavor profile. The cosmic emergency, as Elena had begun thinking of it, revealed itself through a series of increasingly alarming sensor readings that made her previous concerns about malfunctioning coffee makers seem quaint by comparison. Lyralii's projections showed a tear in spacetime approaching their sector with the inevitability of a bureaucratic deadline, threatening to unravel the fabric of local reality in ways that would make theoretical physicists weep and insurance companies declare bankruptcy. Elena's human approach to crisis management involved creating detailed lists, checking equipment twice, and consuming excessive amounts of caffeine, while Lyralii's response consisted of humming complex harmonies that made the station's artificial gravity hiccup in rhythmic patterns. Their collaboration began with Elena frantically taking notes on everything Lyralii demonstrated, until she realized her tablet had started translating her observations into what appeared to be an interdimensional technical manual written in the style of a children's picture book. The dimensional rift, according to Lyraliai's explanations, behaved like a cosmic tantrum thrown by spacetime itself when parallel universes rubbed against each other in uncomfortable ways. Elena's attempts to understand this phenomenon through conventional physics proved about as useful as trying to fix a starship with a screwdriver and determination, though she suspected determination might actually be more helpful than her current understanding of quantum mechanics. Lyraliai's solution involved what she described as quantum engineering, though her demonstrations looked more like an elegant dance performed by someone who had convinced the laws of physics to be her willing partners. Elena watched her alien colleague manipulate probability fields with the casual expertise of someone rearranging furniture, except the furniture happened to be the fundamental forces that held reality together. Their first collaborative attempt at addressing the crisis nearly resulted in Elena accidentally reversing the station's artificial gravity while trying to follow Lyraliai's instructions. The experience of watching her coffee float away in perfectly spherical drops while Lyraliai apologized in harmonics that translated roughly to "oops, my mistake," taught Elena valuable lessons about the importance of precise communication during cosmic emergencies. Elena's scientific training proved surprisingly complementary to Lyraliai's intuitive understanding of multidimensional physics, though their working sessions resembled a collaboration between a meticulous engineer and an artist who painted with the building blocks of existence. Elena's methodical approach helped Lyraliai identify patterns she might have overlooked, while Lyraliai's broader perspective showed Elena possibilities that human science hadn't yet imagined. The revelation that alien technology responded to emotional resonance rather than mechanical input created numerous comedic moments as Elena learned to operate devices that seemed designed by beings who had never encountered the concept of user-unfriendly interfaces. Her first attempt to activate a quantum stabilizer resulted in flooding the observation deck with the scent of lavender and the sound of what appeared to be an alien lullaby, an emergency protocol triggered by her frustration levels reaching what Lyraliai's people apparently considered dangerously elevated. Elena discovered that Lyraliai's matter-of-fact approach to miraculous phenomena masked a deep curiosity about human problem-solving methods. When Elena explained her species' tendency to solve complex problems by hitting them with increasingly sophisticated tools until something worked, Lyraliai's response conveyed both amusement and admiration for what she termed humanity's beautiful stubbornness in the face of impossible odds. Their breakthrough came when Elena realized that her linear thinking could help anchor Lyraliai's multidimensional awareness in stable patterns. While Lyraliai perceived the approaching dimensional rift as a complex web of interconnected possibilities, Elena's human brain insisted on viewing it as a specific problem requiring a specific solution, a perspective that helped focus their combined efforts. Lyraliai's casual mention that her grandmother had once knitted a sweater from crystallized time illustrated the cultural gap between their species while also providing Elena with unexpected insights into temporal mechanics. The concept that time could be harvested, processed, and crafted into useful items challenged Elena's understanding of causality, though she had to admit the practical applications were intriguing. Elena's attempts to explain human engineering principles to Lyraliai led to amusing misunderstandings when she described how humans had learned to harness electricity, only to discover that Lyraliai's people had never needed to harness energy because they had simply asked it politely to cooperate. The revelation that courtesy extended to fundamental forces explained why Lyraliai's technology seemed so organic compared to human devices, which apparently struck her as unnecessarily aggressive toward the matter they were meant to manipulate. The dimensional rifts approach accelerated their timeline in ways that made Elena nostalgic for the leisurely pace of academic research, where the most pressing deadline involved submitting papers before conference cutoffs rather than preventing reality from coming unraveled. Lyraliai's projections showed they had perhaps 6 standard hours before the tear reached critical instability, at which point their local spacetime would experience what she diplomatically described as significant reorganization. Elena's practical nature focused on developing contingency plans while Lyraliai worked on the primary solution, leading to numerous discussions about worst-case scenarios that ranged from mildly catastrophic to cosmically embarrassing. Elena's suggestion that they prepare emergency broadcasts to warn other ships in the area prompted Lyraliai to create communication devices that would transmit warnings across multiple dimensions simultaneously, a precaution Elena hadn't realized was necessary until she considered the implications of interdimensional traffic patterns. Their working relationship developed into a rhythm of complementary expertise, with Elena's systematic approach balancing Lyreliai's intuitive leaps in ways that surprised them both. Elena learned to trust calculations that defied her understanding, while Lyreliai discovered the value of human skepticism in double-checking cosmic-scale engineering projects. The station's automated systems began registering environmental changes as their preparations affected local spacetime, prompting a series of automated announcements that Elena's tablet helpfully translated into increasingly absurd safety warnings. The suggestion that all personnel should please secure any loose temporal paradoxes and ensure quantum entanglements are properly stowed would have been amusing if Elena weren't increasingly certain that such precautions might actually be necessary. Lyreliai's explanation of the ritual required to seal the dimensional rift involved concepts that stretched Elena's understanding beyond its comfortable limits, requiring both participants to trace interconnected circles spanning multiple dimensions while maintaining precise emotional resonance with cosmic forces that had no human names. Elena's response that this sounded like the universe's most complicated dance routine earned her another burst of Lyreliai's musical laughter, along with the observation that humans possessed an unexpected talent for reducing cosmic complexity to manageable analogies. Elena had always imagined that saving the universe would involve more heroic speeches and fewer complaints about interdimensional health and safety standards, but she found herself muttering about the lack of proper handholds while floating in a field of reversed gravity that Lyreliai had assured her was perfectly safe for bipedal carbon-based life forms. The ritual to seal the dimensional rift required precise positioning across multiple planes of existence, which apparently meant Elena needed to maintain her concentration while experiencing the cosmic equivalent of being tumbled in a washing machine designed by theoretical physicists. Lyreliai floated nearby with the serene grace of someone accustomed to defying fundamental forces, her elongated ears shifting subtly to track energy patterns that Elena's human senses couldn't detect. The alien woman's calm demeanor would have been reassuring if Elena hadn't spent the past hour learning that Lyreliai's definition of minor side effects included temporary color blindness, a brief period where gravity worked sideways, and the possibility that her hair might achieve sentience for approximately 3 minutes. The dimensional rift pulsed before them like a wound in spacetime itself, its edges crackling with energies that made Elena's instruments surrender entirely and display error messages in languages that hadn't been invented yet. Her tablet had given up any pretense of scientific functionality and was now offering helpful suggestions for existential crisis management for beginners, along with a 5-star recipe for something called temporal flux smoothies. Elena began tracing her portion of the interdimensional circle with movements Lyreliai had taught her through a combination of demonstration and what could only be described as cosmic charades. The pattern felt unnatural to human muscles accustomed to linear motion, requiring her to think in curves that existed in dimensions her brain insisted couldn't be real. Each traced segment left trails of light that hummed with harmonics Elena felt in her bones, creating a symphony that would have been beautiful if she weren't terrified of making a mistake that might accidentally relocate Earth to a universe where the laws of physics were more like polite suggestions. Lyreliai's corresponding movements created complementary patterns that interwove with Elena's in ways that suggested the ritual had been designed by beings who understood mathematics as poetry and physics as art. The alien woman's grace made Elena acutely aware of her own clumsy humanity, though Lyreliai's encouraging harmonics suggested that human awkwardness was somehow an essential component of their collaborative effort. The dimensional rift responded to their combined patterns by pulsing brighter, its chaotic energies beginning to organize into structures that Elena's scientific mind recognized as stable configurations despite their impossible complexity. The process reminded her of watching a cosmic origami master fold spacetime into neater arrangements, except the paper was reality itself and mistakes would be measured in universes rather than torn sheets. Elena's human stubbornness proved invaluable when the ritual reached its most critical phase and every instinct she possessed screamed that what they were attempting couldn't possibly work. Her species' talent for continuing despite overwhelming evidence of futility anchored Lyreliai's multidimensional manipulations in stable patterns that prevented their efforts from dissipating across infinite probability cascades. The moment of convergence arrived with sensations Elena had no words to describe, as if every atom in her body briefly remembered being part of the cosmic explosion that created the universe while simultaneously experiencing the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. The dimensional rift sealed with an implosion that was somehow both silent and deafening, leaving behind a display of auroral light that painted the observation deck in colors that would haunt Elena's dreams in the most beautiful way possible. Elena's first coherent thought after the sealing was completed involved wondering whether her insurance covered cosmic events, quickly followed by the realization that she was still floating upside down and her hair had indeed achieved temporary sentience, offering polite commentary on the experience in a voice that sounded suspiciously like her third-grade teacher. Lyraliai's harmonious laughter at Elena's predicament created ripples in the settling spacetime that tickled in ways Elena hadn't known were possible. The restoration of normal physics proceeded gradually, with gravity remembering how to work properly and Elena's instruments slowly returning to displays that wouldn't require translation from ancient Sumerian. Her tablet's final contribution to the crisis involved automatically submitting a 5-star review of their interdimensional experience to what appeared to be a cosmic travel website, praising the life-changing adventure and excellent customer service from Lyraliai of the 9th Resonance. Elena discovered that successfully preventing reality from unraveling had left her with perspectives that couldn't fit back into her previous understanding of the universe. The careful boundaries between possible and impossible had blurred beyond recognition, replaced by a broader awareness of cosmic possibilities that made her morning routine of atmospheric readings feel like meditation on the infinite rather than mundane data collection. Lyraliai's decision to remain aboard the station created logistical challenges that Elena approached with characteristic human practicality, beginning with the need to explain to Earth Command why their atmospheric readings now included measurements from 17 dimensions and their power consumption had increased by amounts that defied conservation of energy. Elena's reports would eventually require the development of entirely new scientific disciplines, though she suspected her superiors would initially assume she'd been sampling the research station's emergency room supplies. The establishment of permanent cultural exchange between their species began with Elena teaching Lyraliai the finer points of coffee preparation while learning that Lyraliai's people had developed beverages that could caffeinate thoughts rather than just bodies. Elena's attempts to document alien recipes proved challenging when ingredients included the sound of distant laughter crystallized at absolute zero and approximately 3 tablespoons of concentrated starlight, preferably from a binary system. Elena's role as humanity's first interdimensional diplomat emerged naturally from her unique experience, though she insisted on retaining her original position because someone needed to maintain proper atmospheric readings even in an expanded universe. Her daily routine now included monitoring cosmic weather patterns that could affect 17 different dimensional layers while ensuring the coffee maker continued functioning according to purely terrestrial physics. Lyraliai's studies of human creativity yielded insights that surprised them both, particularly her observation that humanity's approach to problem-solving resembled what her people called beautiful chaos, a force of creation that emerged from the intersection of determination and imagination. Elena learned that her species' seemingly chaotic development had created patterns of innovation that Lyraliai's more organized civilization found both fascinating and instructive. The universe had become infinitely larger and more complicated, but Elena found herself oddly comfortable with complexity that would have overwhelmed her previous understanding. Her morning coffee tasted the same, her instruments still required regular calibration, and bureaucratic paperwork remained tedious regardless of dimensional scope, providing reassuring constants in a reality that had revealed itself to be far stranger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. Elena's final log entry for the day noted normal atmospheric conditions across all monitored dimensions, successful completion of first contact protocols with interdimensional neighbors, and a reminder to order more coffee because the universe had gotten considerably more interesting and would require appropriate levels of caffeine to navigate properly.